Billionaire father sees black waitress let disabled son lead a dance step, and then changes her life forever. The silence that fell over Kingsley's Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant was so thick it seemed to have weight. Conversation ceased. Cutlery froze in midair and dozens of eyes fixed on the small space between the tables. 10-year-old Lucas Montgomery was visibly shaking. His legs, trapped in metal braces, wavered as he reached out to Diana Johnson, the restaurant's only black waitress. The live piano had just begun a soft melody, and the boy's impulse to ask someone to dance came without warning. "Sir, control your son." Manager Thornton's sharp voice cut through the silence. "That's inappropriate. This is not a dance hall, and our employees are not here to entertain children." Richard Montgomery, owner of Montgomery Investments and one of the richest men in the country, swallowed hard. It was the first time he had taken Lucas out to dinner in public since the accident that had partially paralyzed his legs 2 years earlier, a mistake he would not repeat. "Lucas, sit down." The order came low but firm. Diana remained motionless, her gaze shifting between the manager, the billionaire, and the boy whose hand was still hanging in the air. In her 5 years working there, she had learned to become invisible, especially to customers like Montgomery. "Mr. Thornton, I'm leaving. My shift is over." Her voice sounded calm as she removed her apron and placed it on the tray. Then, to everyone's amazement, she smiled at Lucas and took his hand. "I can't dance in an apron." Richard stood up abruptly. "What do you think you're doing?" Diana held his gaze. "I'm accepting an invitation, sir." Before anyone could interfere, Lucas took a hesitant step forward. His foot dragged painfully across the floor, and the metal of his braces screeched. But Diana didn't try to guide him or hurry him. She simply adjusted her own pace to his. "She's getting fired tomorrow," whispered a woman at the next table. Richard watched, paralyzed. A sudden memory struck him. Elizabeth, his late wife, dancing with Lucas in the living room. "It's not about perfection," she had said. "It's about connection." As Diana followed Lucas's clumsy steps, something in the boy's eyes changed. Fear gave way to intense concentration. Shame gave way to shy pride. For the first time since the accident, he wasn't being guided, helped, or corrected. He was leading. "Mr. Montgomery," the manager's voice interrupted his thoughts. "I can assure you this will never happen again. She will be properly disciplined." Richard didn't respond. The entire restaurant seemed to wait for his reaction. After all, a man of his power could end anyone's career with a single word. Employees stopped what they were doing. Other customers watched with morbid curiosity. Lucas's smile, however, was the only sound that echoed in his mind. Diana led the boy back too in his mind. Diana led the boy back to the table after 3 dance steps. "Thank you for asking me out," she said formally, as if speaking to an adult. "It was an honor." When she turned to leave, Richard stopped her. "Wait." His voice sounded different, almost unrecognizable to himself. "What's your full name?" "Diana Johnson, sir." Richard nodded slowly. "Diana Johnson," he repeated as if memorizing it. Then he took a card from inside his jacket and held it out to her. "My office. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. The entire restaurant held its breath. Diana accepted the card without showing any emotion, but her hand trembled slightly. "Dad," Lucas called as she walked away. "Why did you do that?" The question hung in the air like an accusation. Richard watched his son, and for a brief moment saw not just son, and for a brief moment saw not just the child Elizabeth had left in his care, but a complete human being whose wants and needs he had systematically ignored for 2 years. As dinner proceeded in awkward silence, no one noticed Diana's glance before she left. Not out of fear or resignation, but out of a calm determination that contrasted with the storm brewing in Richard Montgomery's eyes. If this story about dignity and transformation is already touching your heart, don't forget to subscribe to the channel to follow how a simple gesture of respect can spark a silent revolution capable of transforming lives forever. The lobby of Montgomery Tower sparkled with its glass and marble walls, reflecting the morning sunlight. Diana Johnson immediately felt out of place in her best outfit. a navy out of place in her best outfit, a navy blue skirt and white blouse bought on sale. The people passing by her wore clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. "Diana Johnson to see Mr. Montgomery," she said to the receptionist, who examined her with a clinical gaze before making a call. "18th floor. Miss Winters will see you." In the elevator, Diana took a deep breath, clutching her worn purse to her chest. It wasn't fear she felt. It was a chest. It wasn't fear she felt. It was a quiet determination that came from having faced worse. Much worse. Miss Winters was a woman in her 40s with a sharp gaze and impeccable posture. "Mr. Montgomery is in a conference call. Please follow me." As she walked through the mirrored hallways, Diana felt the curious stares of the employees. A black woman being escorted through the executive offices was a rare enough occurrence to cause speculation. "He had you fired, didn't he?" Winters asked suddenly when they were alone in a waiting room. "It happens. Powerful clients call and people like you lose their jobs. People like me. You know what I mean?" Winters adjusted her glasses. "Employees who don't know their place." Diana smiled, but it wasn't amusement. "And where exactly would that be?" Before Winters could answer, her phone rang. "He'll see you now." Richard Montgomery's office occupied half the floor. Through the towering glass windows, Manhattan looked like a distant playground. He stood gazing out, as though the city belonged to him. "Mr. Montgomery," Diana greeted formally. Richard turned, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Johnson, thank you for coming." He gestured to a chair. "Please." The silence that followed was deliberate, an old tactic Diana recognized, the kind meant to make people talk too much, say what they shouldn't. "Do you have a background?" Richard finally asked. "Excuse me?" "Education." "College." Diana held his gaze. "Bachelor's in Child Development from NYU. Master's in Special Education. Unfinished." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe. "And you work as a waitress?" "I work 3 jobs, actually. The restaurant, a bookstore on weekends, and tutoring when I find students." Richard walked over to the table, picking up a folder. "I did some research. I wanted to know more about the woman who," he paused, "danced with my son." He opened the folder. Inside were photos of a community center. "Freedom Steps. You co-founded this 6 years ago?" Diana straightened. "With my sister Zoe, a dance program for kids with physical disabilities." He flipped through the papers. "It's about to shut down due to lack of funding." She wasn't surprised. Of course he'd know everything within 24 hours. "I didn't come to ask for your money, Mr. Montgomery." "Then why are you here?" "Because you invited me." He gave a short, dry laugh. "Fair enough." He stood again, restless. "I want you to work for me." Diana blinked. "As a waitress in your home?" "No. As a therapeutic companion for Lucas." Even saying his son's name seemed hard. Diana noticed his glance toward a framed photo, a smiling woman with a baby. "I've hired the best specialists, doctors, therapists. But what you did yesterday..." He paused, uncomfortable. "It was just a dance, Mr. Montgomery." It was the first time I've seen him smile since the accident. He looked away. The words cost him something. "I don't want a dancer. I want someone who can do what you did. Follow, not lead." Diana studied him. Beneath the controlled exterior was a father grasping at hope. "I can pay you 5 times what you're making now." She stood. "No." Richard looked stunned, unused to hearing that word. "I don't work for people who see my color or status before they see my ability," she said calmly. "And I definitely don't work for people trying to buy emotional shortcuts." His face reddened. "You'd refuse help that could solve your problems. Out of pride?" "Out of dignity," she replied. "And because your son deserves more than someone paid to care." At the door, she paused. "Lucas doesn't need more experts. He needs freedom to lead his own life." "You don't know him." "No," she said. "But I know people like him, and the invisible cages built around them." She placed a card on the table. "Freedom Steps. Tuesdays and Thursdays, 4 p.m. Bring Lucas if you want. First class is free." As she walked out, Winters waited, clearly having eavesdropped. "You just said no to Richard Montgomery," she whispered. "Are you insane?" Diana smiled. Maybe. But I'd rather be insane than owned. The next Wednesday, Diana was at the community center's front desk when Zoe ran up, wide-eyed. "There's a Bentley outside," she whispered, adjusting her hijab. "And you won't believe who's in it." Through the glass, Diana saw the sleek car. Lucas sat in the back, looking out nervously. Richard was still at the wheel, frozen in thought. "He's not coming in," Zoe guessed. "Men like that don't come to places like this." Diana thought of Lucas's eyes during their dance. Don't underestimate a determined son. They watched as the car door opened. Lucas stepped out slowly, adjusting his devices. Then, unexpectedly, Richard followed, dressed in casual clothes that still screamed wealth. "I told you he'd come," Diana said softly. Zoe stared. "What did you do?" Diana didn't answer. Her eyes sparkled with a quiet certainty. In her small Bronx apartment, hidden beneath her bed, lay a notebook, filled with years of notes on children like Lucas and fathers like Richard. A plan that began the moment she said yes to a simple dance. What Richard Montgomery didn't realize, what his world of privilege couldn't prepare him for, was that Diana Johnson was never just a waitress. She had agreed to dance with his son, but Diana was more than that. She was a woman on a mission, and Richard Montgomery's world of isolation and privilege was about to face a truth it couldn't buy. Some of life's greatest lessons must be lived. Freedom Steps operated out of an old warehouse. Posters on the walls read, "Your rhythm, your rules, and every move counts." When Richard and Lucas entered, children moved freely to music, some with prosthetics, others in wheelchairs. "It looks chaotic," Richard muttered. "There's structure," Diana replied. "Just not the kind you're used to." She invited Lucas to join. He nodded, then glanced at his father. "Go ahead," Richard said, tense. As Diana guided him in, Zoe approached Richard. "The first day is hardest, for parents." "This isn't therapy," Richard argued. "I've hired top specialists." "And how's that working for Lucas?" Zoe asked gently. Then an older woman entered. Elegant and poised, she carried a cane. "Dr. Elaine Mercer," Zoe whispered. "Neuroscientist, retired Harvard doctor." Mercer noticed Richard. "You've rejected my proposal 3 times. "I didn't expect to see you here," he replied. "I lead the research program," she said. "We study how free movement helps brain development in motor-impaired children." Richard frowned. "This is research?" "Pilot program," Diana explained. "We blend dance with neuroscience." "Then why are you a waitress?" "Because you rejected our proposal 3 times," she said calmly. Realization struck. "You were Dr. Mercer's assistant." "Co-author," Dr. Mercer corrected. "Her work is groundbreaking." "So you knew who I was?" "From the moment you walked in," Diana confirmed. "When Lucas danced, I saw a chance to show you what words couldn't." "Was it staged?" "No, Lucas chose to move. I just followed." Reporters entered the studio. Richard stiffened. "What's this?" "Our first results were published today," Dr. Mercer said. "We invited the press." "You used my son," he said coldly. Diana led him to a room filled with photos of children and progress stats. One wall held an empty frame. "What's that?" "Our vision. A full center. 500 kids a year, not just 50. You planned this. You cancelled our meeting 4 months ago without reading the proposal. I found another way." "Diana," Zoe interrupted. "It's Lucas." They rushed back. Lucas stood in the middle, music off, surrounded by kids. He had removed one brace and was trying to balance. Richard stepped forward, but Diana stopped him. "Wait, watch." Lucas inhaled, focused, and took a shaky, unassisted step. The room erupted in cheers. Camera flashes went off. Richard stood stunned, emotion breaking through his usual composure. "That's why we created Freedom Steps," Diana said. "It's not about perfect steps. It's about first steps, on their own." For the first time, Richard saw his son not as a problem, but as a person discovering strength. "This didn't have to be done by manipulating me." "It didn't," Diana replied. "If you had read our proposal." The press noticed Richard. Whispers grew. Lucas, unaware, kept practicing with quiet determination. Richard was at a crossroads. Walk away and confirm the cold image everyone expected, or embrace what his son had just achieved. For once, neither his wealth nor power could decide what came next. Only he could. Humility wasn't in Richard Montgomery's nature, but as he saw Lucas's face light up, something shifted. The power and control he once relied on now felt distant. Reporters circled him as Lucas took his first unsupported step. "Mr. Montgomery," one asked, "is it true your foundation rejected this program 3 times?" Richard looked at his son, then smiled, unexpectedly. "You know what's hardest for someone like me," he said aloud, "admitting when we're wrong." A stunned silence followed. "The Montgomery Foundation will fully fund Freedom Steps for 5 years and build a permanent rehabilitation center." Cameras flashed. Diana tensed as he added, "On one condition, Ms. Johnson retains full autonomy. No corporate interference." 3 months later, the new center broke ground. It wasn't the flashiest Montgomery project, but it was the most meaningful. Children and families helped design every corner. Diana oversaw construction, often joined by Lucas and, surprisingly, Richard himself. "I never thought you'd show up to meetings," Diana said. "I never thought I'd be reading neuroscience at 50, he replied, studying a marked-up research paper. "Is this penance or do you care?" she asked. Lucas asked to remove his second brace. "I know," she smiled. "You fired the therapist who said that wasn't possible because I told you she was wrong." "She was," Richard admitted. "Why haven't you apologized?" "Because I haven't said the words." "Exactly," Diana said. "Funding isn't an apology. It's compensation." 6 months later, the center's opening felt like another world. Lucas, now wearing only one lightweight brace, led a small performance. He moved with confidence once deemed impossible. "He doesn't need you to hold him," Diana said. "No," Richard nodded. "But he still needs me present." "That's different." "Thank you," he added. "For what?" "For teaching me to follow." A reporter asked, "How does it feel seeing your son's progress?" "I'm proud, not just of what he overcame, but of what he's created for others." "And your biggest lesson?" "That real leaders don't just lead. They follow when someone shows them a better way." A year later, Freedom Steps expanded to 3 cities. Diana won a national award. Lucas started regular school and became a youth ambassador. And Richard learned the hardest lesson of all. True power lies not in control, but in stepping back and letting others lead. In a world where power rarely listens, their story proves that real change begins when a billionaire follows a waitress and a father follows his son.